She had just 20 minutes to make it to the most important interview of her life, her shot at finally breaking through. But none of that mattered when the officer told her to step aside. No reason, no warning, just cold eyes and a firm grip that yanked her future off course. In a city that claimed to be fair, all it took was her skin and her hair to brand her a threat. What happens when your dignity is stripped on camera and the whole world watches in silence? If stories like this move you, consider subscribing to join us for more. Let's start. Zariah Cole clutched her leather portfolio against her chest as she hurried through the crowded subway station. Her heart pounded, not from nerves about the interview, but from the officer's words still ringing in her ears. "You fit the description," he'd said, eyes scanning her like she was a threat, not a designer. They'd stopped her, frisked her, right there on the platform like she was nothing more than a problem to be handled. Her carefully planned morning, ruined. Her confidence, shaken. She had explained herself calmly, even as her voice trembled. She had nothing to hide. But the humiliation cut deeper than any delay. Now, stepping into the pristine glass doors of Ashwood and Crane, she inhaled, slow and deep, centering herself. Her natural hair, shaped in a bold halo of coils, framed her face with the pride she refused to shrink. She wouldn't let them win, not before they even knew her name. The receptionist gave her a tight-lipped smile, eyes flicking briefly to her hair. That was the first glance. It wouldn't be the last. In the boardroom, the panel sat behind a sleek oak table. 3 men and 1 woman, all dressed in monochrome. As Zariah entered, their expressions wavered between confusion and curiosity. She was late. She knew what they were thinking. Still, she smiled. "Thank you for waiting," she said, voice calm, eyes steady. "Let's begin." They began with the usual: experience, portfolio, software knowledge. Zariah answered each question with precision and passion, painting visions of warm, functional spaces with the kind of emotion most people saved for poetry. Her designs weren't just rooms, they were stories. The panel leaned in, intrigued. Their pens scratched faster. Then the door opened. Blair Ashwood entered. Her presence changed the air. Blonde, flawless, and commanding, she offered Zariah practice smile, the kind people give when they've already made up their minds. She introduced herself coolly, then took the lead. "I see you're confident," she said, eyes scanning Zariah from head to toe. "That's refreshing." Zariah kept her expression neutral. "I believe confidence is key in design. If you don't believe in the space you create, no one else will." Blair nodded slowly, then flipped through the portfolio. "These are impressive. Very bold." Her smile curled slightly. "One question before we wrap. Are you open to adjusting your appearance to better align with our brand image?" There it was, not a question. A test. Zariah felt the words crawl under her skin like insects. She took a breath, the silence thick in the room. "My hair," she said, each word deliberate, "is part of who I am. It's my culture, my story, my brand." The room fell silent. The tension could be felt in the way no one dared meet her eyes. Blair's smile vanished. Her voice cooled. "Thank you for your time." Zariah stood, spine straight, eyes still proud. She walked out of the room without another word. The elevator hadn't even reached the lobby before her phone buzzed. One new email. "We appreciate your interest, but have decided to pursue other candidates." No explanation, no courtesy, just rejection. Outside, the city hummed with indifference. Zariah sat on the steps of the building, staring down at the phone in her hand like it had betrayed her. She felt the shame creep in, but she swallowed it. She wouldn't cry here. Not for them. A low voice broke the silence. "You all right, miss?" She looked up. The janitor, older with silver at his temples and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much, stood near the bushes, broom in hand. "Fine," she said quickly, brushing the heat from her face. "You don't sound fine." There was something in his voice, soft but solid. Not pity, just understanding. I just got humiliated for wearing the hair I was born with, she said, bitterness coating the words. Guess boldness don't fit the brand. He didn't respond immediately, just nodded like he knew that pain too well. Before either of them could speak again, the doors behind them burst open. Blair. Her voice carried like poison in water. There she is. I want her off the premises. She made my staff uncomfortable. Zariah stood, confused. What? You raised your voice. Made threats, Blair continued, loud enough for passing eyes to hear. That's a lie, Zariah said, stunned. I was sitting. Security approached before she could finish. You'll need to leave the premises, ma'am, one of them said, his hand already reaching for his radio. She didn't do anything, the janitor cut in, stepping forward. Blair's eyes flashed. You're just a janitor, stay out of it. But it was too late, people were watching, phones were out. Someone whispered, What's going on? Zariah's arms were suddenly behind her back. Cold metal, cuffs. The street spun as her heart raced. Not again, not this. I didn't do anything, she shouted as they led her toward the curb. No one stepped in. Not one voice rose in her defense. Phones recorded, but silence screamed louder. Inside. The cruiser? She sat motionless, face hot with rage and shame. The cuffs dug into her wrists, but the pain in her chest was sharper. The city moved past the window like a blur of betrayal. She leaned back slowly, eyes closed, then opened them with a fire that hadn't dimmed. They don't know who I really, she whispered to herself. It wasn't a cry for help, it was a promise. Days passed like fog. Zariah didn't leave her apartment. She barely touched her food. Headlines began to fade. Social media moved on like it always does. Her name was no longer trending, but her face still lingered in dark corners of the internet. Blurred, twisted, misunderstood. But inside her, the silence was anything but still. She opened an old laptop, one she hadn't touched since before things fell apart, before she walked away from her first company, back when she and Carter used to dream big. A folder sat on the desktop. Pulse render. Final. She clicked it open. Wireframes, user interfaces, data mapping systems, all her work, every late night, every idea. She remembered the thrill of creating something new, beautiful, fast, revolutionary. And she remembered the betrayal that followed just as vividly. She'd left. Quietly. They made it look like her idea. Told her it wasn't the right fit anymore. That she was too aggressive with her vision. But the software, her software, hadn't gone anywhere. Now it had a new name, a new face, Ashwood and Crane. She closed the laptop, jaw clenched, breath shaky. That night she couldn't sleep. Her mind spun with old memories and fresh anger. She needed answers. The next morning she tracked down a familiar name, Kia, a former intern she'd mentored briefly during her time at the startup. They met at a quiet coffee shop, away from, the buzz. Kia looked around before sitting, nervously clutching her phone. I saw the video, she said softly. What they did to you. It wasn't the first time. Zariah raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I recorded things, Kia whispered. Not on purpose at first, just for myself. Proof, I guess. Group chats, voice memos. Blair, Carter, some of the staff. The way they talk when they think no one's listening, it's disgusting. Zariah's breath caught. I've been scared to say anything, Kia admitted. I thought it would ruin me. But when I saw you get arrested like that, when I saw how calm you stayed, I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. Zariah reached out and placed her hand over Kia's. You did the right thing by telling me. And you're not alone. For the first time in days, she felt something flicker in her chest. Not rage, not pain. Resolve. Later that week, she returned to the Ashwood building, not through the front, but around back, where Mr. Alden was hosing, down the sidewalk. He saw her before she spoke. Knew you'd be back, he muttered, nodding toward the service door. They walked inside, past boilers and mop buckets, into a small office tucked behind the mechanical room. He opened a dusty drawer and pulled out an old hard drive. Security feeds. I keep backups, he said. Zariah stared at the box in disbelief. You saved this? He nodded. Didn't always know why, but I knew it mattered. People like us, we don't get the luxury of forgetting. She plugged the drive into her laptop, fingers trembling. There it was, clear footage of the day. Her outside, sitting alone. Blair storming out, yelling false accusations. The security arrived. No threats, no shouting, no crime. Just a setup. Zariah looked up, voice raw. Why are you helping me? Mr. Alden didn't flinch. Because you're not the first they've done this to. Just the first one who might fight back. Her phone buzzed. Carter. She hesitated, then picked up. See, he said casually, like nothing had happened. I heard you're stirring up noise. Is that really smart? She laughed bitterly. Smart? You stole my work, Carter. You and your fiancé. You walked away, he snapped. You didn't want to deal with the stress. We built this. You built it on my back, she shot back, and used my own money to do it. He was quiet for a beat. Then, you don't have proof. I will. Then you'd better be ready to go to war. She ended the call without another word. The war had already started. That night, Kia uploaded a video anonymously. No voiceover, just screenshots, voice notes, texts, racist remarks from Blair, coded language. Then the security footage, unedited, time-stamped, undeniable. It spread like wildfire. Comment sections erupted. Some called Zariah a liar. Others called her a hero. By morning, journalists were circling like hawks. Lauren Banks sent an email. Can we talk? Off the record. Zariah stared at the screen. She typed back, not yet, because this wasn't just about a story anymore. It was about everything they'd taken, and everything she was ready to take back. The courtroom felt like a theater, one where the ending had been written long before the actors took the stage. Zariah walked in with her back straight, chin up, dressed in a black suit that mirrored her resolve. Behind her, a small team, barely a legal crew, more like believers. In her hands, she clutched a leather folder packed with everything she had. Recordings, contracts, timelines, truth. Then Blair entered, smiling, unbothered. A line of suited lawyers flanked her like bodyguards. Sharp shoes, colder eyes, the achi. Room buzzed with quiet tension as both sides took their seats. Zariah's lawyer, a young black woman named Renee, stood first. Calm, clear, brilliant. She laid it all out. The timeline of Zariah's original code, the betrayal by Carter, the identical functions in the software Ashwood and Crane now claimed as their own. The footage, the voice notes, the lies. Then Blair's team took over, and the air shifted. They didn't refute the facts. They reframed them. They called Zariah erratic, emotionally unstable, difficult to work with. They pointed to her resignation as abandonment, claimed her arrest proved a pattern of instability. One even joked about her conspiracy theories, while flashing a charming smile to the jury. They barely mentioned the software. They made her the issue. Zariah sat motionless as they twisted her silence into secrecy, her ambition into arrogance, her hair into non-compliance. When it was her turn to testify, she looked the judge in the eye and spoke with calm conviction. I built that code from the ground up. They pushed me out, changed the name, and profited. Off my work. I have proof. I have receipts. I have truth. But truth, it seemed, wasn't enough. Judge Whitmore's face remained unreadable as he read the verdict. In light of insufficient direct evidence and the defendant's legal ownership records, his voice was gravel, cold, and final. The court rules in favor of Ashwood and Crane. The gavel fell. Zariah didn't move. Around her, gasps, murmurs, some shaking heads, others quietly smug. Her hands clenched in her lap, nails pressing half-moons into her palms. Outside, the media pounced like wolves. Microphones, lights, cameras, questions she didn't answer. Her face was everywhere, again. Online, the smear campaign reignited. Drama queen who lost her case. Unhinged. Just another angry black woman trying to play the victim. She said nothing. No press release, no interviews, no social media. She went silent. The silence was louder than the headlines. Days passed. Then something cracked. Lauren Banks dropped a report that shook the internet like an earthquake. Every piece of evidence Zariah had submitted, and more. Every clip Kia had leaked. Carter's questionable filings, Blair's texts, the security footage. Every receipt, publicly explained and brutally honest. Lauren didn't hold back. She didn't ask for permission. She dropped it all. Hashtags caught fire. Justice for Zariah. IP theft is racism. Blair exposed. The story went global. News anchors flipped their tone. Podcasts dissected the case. Influencers screamed into phones about injustice. Even celebrities shared her story, captioned simply, "We see you." Suddenly, Zariah wasn't just a disgraced designer. She was a symbol, and it terrified the people who buried her. Ashwood and Crane's stock plummeted. Clients pulled out. Petitions to investigate the court ruling gained hundreds of thousands of signatures overnight. But Zariah didn't return to the spotlight. She stayed in a small coastal town under a different name. She walked by the ocean, cooked simple meals, watched the world spin without her. And then one night her phone rang. Unknown number she almost didn't pick up. A calm, older voice greeted her. Smooth, unhurried, powerful. "I saw what they did to you." She didn't speak. "You don't need their boardrooms, or their platforms, or their permission." Still silence. "You built something once, you can build again, bigger, bolder, yours." Zariah swallowed hard, heart thumping. "I'm listening," she whispered. The voice chuckled gently. "Good," it said. "Let's build something better." 1 year had passed since the courtroom had silenced her voice. Now that same voice echoed through marble halls and under glass ceilings. Zariah stood at the entrance of Nova House Interiors, her name gilded. On the doors, carved into the heart of the city. Cameras clicked like applause. Journalists called her name. She didn't pose. She didn't smile for the show. She simply stood there, tall, grounded, whole. Behind her, a team of black architects. Designers and dreamers stood in line. Their eyes gleamed with purpose. Their resumes were once overlooked. Now, they were building an empire. She took the scissors, cut the red ribbon, and stepped inside the future she built from the ashes. No announcement was made. No press release sent. When Nova House quietly acquired the lease to the building that once belonged to Ashwood and Crane, the paperwork was clean. The shell company, untraceable until it was too late. The ink was dry, the deed was signed. The building was hers. Zariah waited. She didn't speak of it, didn't boast. She let the silence simmer, let justice cook slow. And then, on a quiet, Monday morning, history rewrote itself. Blair arrived first, heels clicking against the pavement. Carter close behind her, both dressed in muted defiance. But the building no longer knew them. A security guard blocked the door. Buildings closed, new ownership. Carter scoffed. "We are the owners." The guard didn't flinch. "Not anymore. No keys, no codes, no entry." Inside, the lights were on. The lobby was different, warmer, brighter, free. Zariah sat in the CEO's chair, her chair on the top floor facing the city skyline. She didn't look surprised when the elevator opened. Lauren Banks stood beside her, camera rolling. Mr. Alden leaned quietly against the wall, arms folded, his security badge shining under the lights. Blair and Carter entered like ghosts. Zariah didn't rise. She simply met their eyes with a stillness that shook something in the room. "Welcome to my building," she said. Blair's lips curled into rage. "We'll sue. This isn't over." Zariah placed a folder on the table, calmly, like setting down a coffee cup. She slid it forward. "Carter forged documents to keep me out of my own company. The state found out. He cut a deal." Carter's face was drained of color. Blair turned to him, betrayal crashing into her like a wave. She didn't scream. She didn't sob. She simply stood there, finally silent, as the empire she stole dissolved beneath her. Weeks later, a new video went viral. Kia, the once overlooked intern, now stood at a podium as Nova House's new head of HR. She spoke clearly, her voice unwavering. Our first policy change. No dress code that shames identity. If your hair grows from your head, it belongs in this office. The applause was thunder. Mr. Alden's name trended next. The speech Zariah gave in his honor, a tribute to the man who'd seen it all from behind a mop and bucket, made headlines across the country. He didn't have a corner office, she said, but he kept us safe. A silent guardian who knew when to hold the truth and when to pass it on. Even the courtroom couldn't escape the aftershock. Judge Whitmore faced suspension as scrutiny swept through his docket like fire through dry brush. Cases were reopened. Victims stepped forward. The internet didn't forget, and this time it didn't forgive. And then, one final image. Zariah stood at her mother's grave, the wind catching the edge of her long coat. No cameras, no crowds, just memory. The flashback came soft and sudden. Little Zariah, fists clenched, in a church dress, whispering into the wind. I'll never let them decide who I am. She knelt, placed a white rose by the stone, and walked away. Inside Nova House, sunlight flooded the lobby. No more neutral tones, no more sterile walls. Color bloomed everywhere on the art, the furniture, and the people. Natural hair swayed proudly. Head wraps crowned the confident. Every floor echoed with the sound of new beginnings. Zariah stood at the mezzanine watching her team. They weren't just employees. They were proof. A voiceover began, her own, soft but fierce, like thunderclouds, holding rain. They tried to humiliate me in front of the world, so I made the world watch me rise. Fade to black. Roll credits. Creating stories like the one you just watched takes hours of writing, editing, and emotional care to make sure every moment feels real and honest. These aren't just videos. They're windows into lives often overlooked, crafted to move hearts and spark conversations. If this story touched you, please take a moment to like, share, or leave a comment. Your support helps more than you know. It reminds us that the work matters, that someone's listening. And if you'd like to see more stories like this, subscribing is the kindest way to stay connected. Thank you truly for being here.